skies darkened over Asheville, North Carolina. In just 48 hours, 10 inches of rain transformed peaceful mountain streams into raging rivers, leaving families broken. A storm that would forever change North Carolina. This is the story of Hurricane Helene's impact told through the eyes of one family who endured its wrath and lost everything in the process. As dawn broke over Asheville, North Carolina on September 26, 2024, the Drye family began their day unaware of the impending catastrophe. A single mother, Megan Drye, prepared breakfast for her son Micah, a 7-year-old with an infectious smile and a passion for superheroes. The morning unfolded with familiar comfort. Micah put on his Captain America backpack, a quick hug, and his dash to catch the school bus. At Haw Creek Elementary, Micah spent recess dreaming up superhero adventures with his friends. Meanwhile, Megan's father, Michael Drye, a respected family law attorney, arrived at his downtown office. Known for his compassionate approach, Michael spent the morning preparing for an upcoming custody hearing. Megan's mother, Nora, divided her day between household tasks and volunteer work at the local community center. Megan and her mom, Nora, are really close. They constantly text and call each other a lot, always supporting Megan as she handles being a single mom. As the Drye family went about their routines, meteorologists along the East Coast monitored a developing tropical system in the Atlantic. Weather reports hinted at a significant storm, but what was about to happen next would change North Carolina forever. The family gathered at Megan's home that evening for their weekly dinner tradition. Micah amused them with tales of his school day, while his grandparents, Michael and Nora, listened intently. After dinner, as Micah settled in for his nightly superhero story, Megan noticed a weather update on her phone. The forecast mentioned increased chances of rain and wind for the weekend, but she didn't think much of it. Before bed, the family gathered for a quick photo. Still in his superhero pajamas, Micah insisted on striking a pose with his grandparents. Megan set the timer on her phone and rushed to join them, capturing a moment of pure joy. As night fell over Asheville, the Drye family drifted off to sleep, their thoughts filled with plans for the coming days. Little did they know that tragedy awaited them, but they might have avoided it if they had understood the next part of this video. As the Drye family slept peacefully in Asheville, unaware of the approaching danger, a seemingly harmless weather system in the Atlantic went through a terrifying transformation. What began as a tropical depression off the coast of Africa rapidly organized into a potent storm system. Experts monitoring satellite imagery and atmospheric data soon realized they were witnessing the birth of an extraordinary storm. The tropical depression intensified, fueled by a perfect confluence of atmospheric conditions. Warm sea surface temperatures of 80 degrees provided a lot of energy, while favorable wind patterns allowed efficient organization. Within hours, the system became Tropical Storm Helene, but it was far from complete. Helene's development defied conventional forecasting models. Wind speeds escalated, and the barometric pressure at the storm's center plummeted to 950 millibars, signaling the emergence of a monster hurricane. Satellite imagery revealed the storm's structure, a well-defined eye, encircled by tightly coiled bands of intense thunderstorms. These powerful rain bands, stretching for hundreds of miles. Helene's winds continued to intensify, ultimately reaching sustained speeds of 130 miles per hour, solidifying its status as a Category 4 hurricane. With each passing hour, the window for preparation got smaller. Evacuation orders were rapidly issued for vulnerable coastal areas. But meanwhile, in Asheville, the Drye family remained oblivious to the approaching storm, going about their daily lives. As Helene is about to make landfall on the North Carolina coast, forecasters warned of the possibility of a wall of water up to 20 feet high slamming into coastal communities, threatening to inundate entire neighborhoods. But what happens next forever changed the lives of the Drye family. A chain of events that no one could have predicted. As Hurricane Helene approached Asheville, an unsettling calm descended upon the city. The air grew thick with humidity, and a stillness haunted the streets. Residents felt a palpable tension as if nature itself was holding its breath. Then, out of nowhere, the storm unleashed its power. Torrential rain pounded rooftops and streets while fierce winds blew through trees and power lines. Within hours, Asheville's beautiful landscape transformed into a war zone. Floodwaters surged through streets and neighborhoods ruthlessly, rising at an unexpected rate. Local infrastructure, overwhelmed by the sheer volume of rainfall, failed within minutes. Eyewitness accounts watched horror as cars and massive 18-wheelers were swept away like toys. The floodwaters reached 27 feet above Swannanoa River Road, turning familiar streets into raging rivers. But for the Drye family, the realization of danger came gradually, then all at once. At first, it was just water seeping under the door. We thought we could manage, but then the walls started to groan, and suddenly we were moving. Megan Drye recounted. The family's home, once a sanctuary, became a death trap as it began to break apart in the surging waters. First responders were overwhelmed. Rescuers were unable to reach those in need, blocked by impassable roads and rising waters. Like many others, the Drye family retreated to their roof as a last resort. They clung to each other and to hope. Just imagine the raw fear of that moment. As the storm continued, the Drye family and countless others tried to hang on their rooftops, and just when it seemed like things couldn't get worse, nature had one final, cruel twist in store. The Drye family is fighting for survival on the top of their home's roof. They become increasingly desperate as the floodwaters rise. The once familiar landscape is now a raging stream of water. The scale of destruction around them is incomprehensible. Megan Drye, her young son Micah, and her parents cling to each other in their shelter, scanning the horizon for rescue. The thunderous noise of the water current made communication nearly impossible, forcing them to rely on gestures and shouted fragments. They waved desperately at any sound that might indicate approaching help. As hours passed, the psychological toll was starting to weigh heavily on the family. I just kept thinking, I didn't know I was going to die today. It was a complete panic, Megan described. Despite her fear, Megan focused on keeping young Micah calm, telling stories of hope amidst the chaos. With cell service compromised, Megan sent desperate text messages to her sisters, updating them on their dire situation. These served as both a cry for help and a heartbreaking record of their misery, each message potentially their last contact with loved ones. As Hurricane Helene raged on, the wind howled fiercely around them, driving rain so heavy it became hard to see or even catch a breath. The relentless pressure of the floodwaters battered their home, making the walls groan and the foundation shift beneath them. Then, with devastating speed, the house gave way to the overpowering force of the flood. It shattered, leaving the family exposed to the storm's wrath. In the chaos, the Dryes were torn apart, each swept away by the raging currents. Megan found herself tangled in tree branches, her father nearby while her mother floated past. As the floodwaters carried her away, Megan struggled. The current repeatedly pushed her under, its strength so immense that it quickly moved buildings and vehicles. In those moments of desperation, Megan felt an inexplicable presence guiding her, helping her focus solely on survival. But in her mind, one thought consumed her. Was her son, Micah, still out there, clinging to life? Or had the storm already claimed him? As the floodwaters carried Megan Drye away from her family, she was thrust into a battle for survival. For 5 grueling hours, Megan faced a test of endurance that pushed her to the limits of human capability. The flood's raw power moved buildings and vehicles with terrifying ease. Megan's body was battered by floating debris as she struggled to keep her head above water. During such extreme circumstances, the human body often experiences a surge of adrenaline, temporarily enhancing physical performance and survival instincts. However, prolonged exposure to cold water posed significant risks, potentially leading to hypothermia and impaired cognitive function. Megan described feeling an otherworldly presence guiding her. This sensation encouraged her to let go of her material possessions and even the tree she had been clinging to, allowing her to become more buoyant in the water. Miraculously, Megan spotted potential rescuers in the distance. This glimpse of salvation reignited her will to survive, pushing her to summon reserves of strength she never knew she possessed. However, the unpredictable currents and debris made it impossible for her to reach them, leaving her at the mercy of the floodwaters again. But just when it seemed that all hope was lost, Megan found herself stuck between 2 shipping containers, a bizarre twist of fortune that likely saved her life. This delicate position, while uncomfortable, provided a temporary refuge from the relentless struggle to stay afloat. She was safe for now, but Megan couldn't stop thinking about Micah and her parents. The chaos of the flood blurred everything, but one thing stuck with her. Micah's voice cutting through the storm, crying out for help. Later, when she talked about it, her voice broke under the weight of it all. "I held on to hope for as long as I could," she said, her words catching. "But those screams, they were the last time I ever heard from my son." As the floodwaters receded, they unveiled a landscape transformed beyond recognition. Asheville's once familiar streets and neighborhoods lay buried beneath a thick layer of mud and debris. Uprooted trees, overturned cars, and buildings swept off their foundations created a scene of utter devastation. Search and rescue teams faced daunting challenges. The extensive flooding, which had risen 27 feet above Swannanoa River Road, made many areas inaccessible. Rescue workers navigated treacherous terrain, relying on boats and helicopters to reach isolated pockets where survivors might be trapped. The affected area spanned hundreds of square miles, making the task difficult and emotionally draining for those involved. The days following the flood were marked by an agonizing question. Where had the raging waters carried the Drye family? Search teams combed through debris-strewn neighborhoods, rivers, and forests, each discovery raising both hope and dread. The answer to Megan's haunting question about her son came in the most devastating way. Micah's small body was found nearly a quarter-mile from their home, a grim confirmation of the fears that had taken root in Megan's heart after hearing his final cries. Adding to the heartbreak, Megan's mother's remains surfaced 8 days later, washed ashore on the grounds of Asheville's historic Biltmore estate. The unpredictable nature of the flood's devastation was laid bare in these harrowing recoveries, a stark reminder of the storm's unforgiving power. The emotional toll on the community was beyond heartbreaking. Volunteers and first responders pushed through exhaustion, working day and night to recover victims and comfort grieving families. Megan's sister, Jess, summed it up simply. "There are people out there who had it worse than us." But as the days went by, the true scale of the tragedy started to hit. Every recovered body felt like another punch to the gut for Asheville. Finding Micah's body was a devastating blow, followed by the recovery of his grandparents, Michael and Nora. And yet, these losses were just the tip of the iceberg. Hurricane Helene took many lives, and when compared to Hurricane Milton, which made landfall on the coast of Florida just a couple of weeks later with stronger winds, Helene's death toll was even more devastating. Despite Milton's stronger winds, Helene's body count, which we will reveal next, was simply heartbreaking. The mountainous regions of western North Carolina, along with the state's overall landscape, were highly vulnerable to the devastating impact of Hurricane Helene. The area's topography made it particularly susceptible to flooding, landslides, and widespread destruction, with Asheville suffering significant damage as floodwaters overwhelmed the region. Hurricane Helene's devastating impact on North Carolina left a huge mark, claiming at least 227 lives and causing widespread destruction across multiple counties and cities. Beyond the human toll, the storm also inflicted significant economic damage, with losses estimated at over $1.2 billion, crippling local businesses, infrastructure, and entire industries, leaving the state to grapple with both physical and financial recovery. Hurricane Helene's devastating impact on North Carolina is a stark reminder of nature's power and community resilience. The storm reshaped landscapes, claimed lives, and left an indelible mark on the state's history. In its wake, communities rallied together, demonstrating remarkable strength. Megan Drye's story embodies the profound loss experienced by many. A surviving rosebush is a poignant memorial to her family, symbolizing hope amidst destruction. "There are no words to describe losing half of your heart," Megan reflected, her voice tinged with grief and faith. As North Carolina rebuilds, Hurricane Helene's legacy catalyzes change. Communities focus on preparedness and infrastructure improvements. The enduring spirit of survivors and unbreakable bonds of human compassion inspire resilience in the face of overwhelming tragedy.